this question. Which day of the Lord's ministry do you think has the most written about it in the gospel accounts? This is the easy question. No. That's the answer to the second question, to which you're going to be correct. The crucifixion. Well, there's so much about the crucifixion, but outside of the crucifixion, which day would you think has the most written about it? Excellent. So good. So I remember when we studied this in the life of Christ, there's so many events. At first we didn't connect them all, but it's quite clear when you do put all the phrases together that there's this enormous day in the Lord's ministry, just one big day, which is so massive. It's the day which ends, which they take him even as he was and put him in the boat. It's that day. And we just want to go through that in context to the healing of Legion, because you could even tag Legion onto that same day. It's in that same 24-hour or 48-hour period of the Lord. That great day in the Lord's ministry. And what was he trying to do in that day? Well, thematically, Mark tells us that he spent the night before in prayer to the Father, trying to work out of all of us, imagine if we're the disciples who follow him, which 12 I should choose to be with me in that inner sanctum. Now, it's not exactly the next chronological event, but Mark obviously joins it thematically for us to tell us that this is what's on the Lord's mind. And if he was going to choose just the right 12, and he's talking to his Father about this one, and going through his personality and the characteristics and the advantages of having him in the 12, it took all night. On one level at least, the Lord's saying, well, if you're going to follow me, this is what my life is about. And this particular day shows that. And it's another day where it's like he's stretching out his arms to Israel, saying, we suddenly started echoing. No? Stretching out his arms to all of his people, saying, come back to me. This is what I am about. Follow me. Listen to my teaching. And so it's amazing when you think about it. And here are, and it's way too small, isn't it? The list of the events. It's not the fine print. That is the details of the day. And, I'll just tell you about some of the things. It begins with him going back to the house in Capernaum. Does anybody know which house he could have possibly been staying at now that he's left Nazareth? It probably is Peter's house. And if it's not Peter's house, it's another house. I'm just putting it out there. I don't know. It's probably Peter's house, but he goes home, and immediately, like on other occasions when Mark says there was just no room, people had come crowding to the door. This day begins with him not even having any leisure to eat. And what's it tell you about somebody that doesn't have time to eat?
Pretty dedicated.
Dedicated. And you know what I'm thinking? He wants to eat. And it's the same question that I asked the other night. Do you know why he wanted to eat? Because he was hungry. So he's just like you or me. Like if I get to school and I haven't eaten anything, and I think, I'll make it through to recess, and I always get my ambitions mixed up with my capabilities. I think I'll make it through to recess. I'll have a coffee just to help me. The only thing coffee ever does is help the headache along. By the time of recess, if I haven't throttled too many kids, I'm in a really bad mood by then. And you need food. No rest. They wouldn't even give him a chance. In fact, the day begins so badly that his own family have come to take him, come to seize him. As they said, the challenges of the ministry, and they didn't even believe in him anyway, but the challenges of what he's trying to do, it's probably embarrassed the family sufficiently, and it's tipped him over the edge and he's gone totally insane. He's beside himself. That's what they say. And that's how it begins. And he dismisses them, and he then starts to, he heals a blind man who is also mute and can't speak. And then he comes into contact with the Pharisees. He actually summons them because he hears that he's been maligned by them. And they say that, well, he healed this person through the power of sin. And that's just a no-brainer. And the Lord picks up on that and says, don't be ridiculous. Because a kingdom divided against itself can't stand. Why would I be doing that? The guy's got some ailment. That's good. If I'm bad, that's good. I'll keep the ailments going. And so he dismisses their argument as well. He warns them that because of their persistence and their terrible lack of acknowledgement of him and his work, that they were in danger of the unforgivable sin. That is, you ready for it? The unforgivable sin is nothing more than having a pride so deep that you will not say sorry. That's the unforgivable sin. That you will not say sorry to God, to have something that deep within your heart that God can't even recover you. Of course he can't forgive you. And the Lord, he then tells them, furthermore, not only will you be in danger of the unforgivable sin if you persist in this type of pride, but you're also a family of snakes. So he really exacerbates the situation, and the day doesn't get any better from that time. He calls them an adulterous generation, and he asserts that he's wiser than Solomon. And so when you start looking at some of these things, then in the house now, settled down with a whole crowd around him, can you imagine this? His brethren, his own brothers, have gone back home and they've persuaded Mary that the situation's so bad that she has to come. And this is the second time now. And it looks like there's 3 times on this day that his family try to stop him. At least 2. This is the second time, and they've even got mum on side. And they get to the door, and you imagine if this was the case, and so where the Lord is up here, they knock at the door back there and they say to Ken, can you tell the Lord that his family here and his mother's here? And they say to Andrew, can you tell him? And it goes down, and I don't know any other brethren, but all the way down to David, then down here to me. And I don't say, oh, okay, could everyone just part, please, so I can go and, address this? I send it back through David, back through all the brethren I don't know, to Andrew, to Ken. Well, what did he say? All the way he says, well, he just pointed around and said his family's in here. He actually disowns his family in front of all his disciples on that day. That's what the Lord did. And so you start try and understand as well the emotional struggle that the Lord's going through in doing this, in trying to commit himself and stay committed and maintain a path of such stricture in his obedience to God. It's just incredible when you think about it. And at that time, then when he dismisses his family, it says that he left for the sea. And we remember what happened on that occasion. When he gets down to the beach, the crowd surge him. So he's probably up to his ankles and maybe his knees in the water, and it's becoming, if not unsafe, just not practical. So he gets into the boat and he pushes out a little bit. And you have that beautiful scene where they're all sitting up on the beach and the Lord teaches them. And he tells parable after parable. The sower, the lamp under the basket, the parable of the tares, the good seed, the mustard seed. And someone starts to elbow their friend and say, what's he telling stories for? He goes, I know. Have you just got him? He's just been telling story after story after story. It's going on and on. What's going on with all these stories? He hadn't done this before, not like this. And so he talks about, and this is another little turning point in the Lord's ministry. He says, this is why I'm talking in parables for. And why does he talk in parables, brothers and sisters? Why did he decide to do this? Yeah, but probably the exact opposite to easy to understand initially. It probably does make a bigger impact once you grasp the analogies and metaphors, but at first it was for the people that, like these two who are just sitting going, like another story, and I like stories, and so there's this guy here, he loves the stories, and he just thinks, oh well, another story, see you later. They don't go any deeper. But the stories were meant to weed out from those who followed, those who really wanted to know and those who didn't want to know. Simply somebody that would say, oh, that was so interesting, what was that about? And ask the question. Having asked the question, you were able to get down to the level that the Lord wanted. And when they get back to the house, like he tells all these stories, and then he goes back into the house and the disciples are going like, my brains are hurting, what did that mean? And he explains to them the parable of the sower and the parable of the tares. This is all on this same day. In the house, surging crowd, out of the house. He tells the story, the parables, the mustard seed and the leaven. And then the treasure in the hid field. We know that story. Remember that? The guy that sneakily falls across the treasure, sells everything and buys that block of land just so he can have the treasure. And then the pearl of great price. The pearl of the kingdom. Somebody who's been searching for the pearl and another person who has it and just says, oh, it's pretty valuable, but he's willing to sell it. No one would sell the pearl of great price. He tells that story as well in the fishing net and about the old and new treasures. And then it seems, if you go to Luke chapter, well, if you just later, Luke chapter 8, either that was the same occasion or Luke 8 presents another occasion when you look at the connective statements, it seems chronological, that for the third time his family even attempt to come and get him again. Stop it. You're embarrassing us. And for the first time the Lord is silent and they're just dismissed. The second time he says, these are all my family here. And the third time he says, my family are they that do the will of God. Like he just says it sharply. He said, the second time, those that listen to what I have to say and do the will of God are my family. And the third time it appears he just says, my family are those that do the will of God. And he won't have anything to do with his family. And he disowns them. And then you know what happens. His brethren don't even believe in him. So this is the day where he's called the disciples and the apostles, and we're all listening to this. Maybe we want to follow too. And the Lord is telling them, you've got to understand, you've got to get over your natural affections. This is how hard it is. And no one could accuse him, well, you haven't done it. Wow. Imagine that emotional strain. And it ends with, that same evening as he's about to get into the boat because he finally gets away from the crowd. And he sees the crowd coming again. He says, let's go across the lake. We'll just have a look at this one. It's in Matthew chapter 8, please, brothers and sisters. In Matthew 8, right at the end of this day, if the day's making you feel tired, do you imagine if I said to you, that's the itinerary you have for your day today. I hope you go all right, get through it and see how you perform. I'm not certain that it was a representation of every day of the Lord's ministry. This is probably a particularly busy one, but there's no way he shirked any day. And this is a day which you could pick out and say, this, if you want to be a disciple, this is what it's about. And it ends with, a scribe comes up to him in Matthew chapter 8 and verse 18 and says, Teacher, I will follow you wherever you go. And we get that famous line from the Lord which says, the foxes have holes, the birds of the air have nests, but the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head. Now I'm going to ask you, brothers and sisters, what do you think that means when he says, the Son of Man has nowhere to lay his head? Yes, that's exactly what it means. You look at Christians all over the internet and they say, oh, poor Jesus didn't have a house. He was so poor. It's not what it's saying. He may have been poor, but he certainly had a house to eat in. But what the day started, remember, with not even having enough time to eat. And this guy comes along and says, oh, look, I'll follow you anywhere. And the Lord's saying, well, if you want to play A grade, if you want to be here following me, I'm going to tell you, you're going to have to sacrifice a few things because you're not even going to get any sleep. That's what he meant. He's so busy, so hassled and hustled by the crowds that surged and pressed around him that he didn't even have time to sleep. We know because the disciples take him even as he was and they put him in the boat and he's gone. That's exactly what it's like. And we know what happens then, how tired he is. He sleeps through the storm. Now, is that even possible, to sleep through a storm? Has anyone ever been jet lagged before, like really badly jet lagged? Jodie and I came home once from the UK, and I always get it worse coming home because I'm so mad about having to come home. I never sleep on the plane. And Mum had picked us up in Brisbane, and it was about 7 o'clock, drove us home. We got home about 10, and of course you have to do the whole family thing, give out all the souvenirs that you've got for the kids. And Mum was there, so we had to spend time with her and everything, and that's fine. But everything was starting to swim, and I remember it got to about 3 o'clock and I was just gone. I was totally shattered, and Jodie had just gone on the bed. And I remember thinking, I said to the kids, "Oh, kids, don't get up to too much naughty stuff. I'm just going to lay here for 5 minutes." And I remember the kids coming up, putting blankets and things on me. I was just sort of dozed in and out of consciousness. About 3 o'clock, I woke up at 8 the next morning. And I just sort of turned, and we had this open plan type of house, which you could see the lounge room, the dining room and the kitchen, and the whole place had been totally and utterly destroyed. They had cooked everything that was found in the cupboard. Even they tried to cook tins. There was popcorn everywhere. You know they'd been fighting because there was things busted and broken, and I didn't hear a thing. I slept through the whole storm, and I was tired just from my own things. Can you imagine how tired you'd have to be to sleep through this type of storm, which even hardened sailors who've spent their whole life in the Sea of Galilee? They're the ones who were scared. And so when you think about that storm, was that the only storm in this? How many storms were there? And if I could tell you, I mean, we know where the main one is. Where's the main storm in this chapter, if we're going to talk in metaphors? Well, it's definitely Legion, isn't it? He's got the main storm raging inside of him, but what about the crowds? I mean, that's also a major theme here. The surging crowd. The disciples, the storming legions we've mentioned, storming the herdsmen, the people of the city, the people of the country, Jairus the next day, all fearful, anxious, needy, worried, tumultuous people with the storm caused by sin, their own sin or others' sin, all raging inside of them. We're all in it, brothers and sisters. All of us have got some sort of a storm going on in our life. The point of this healing of Legion for us is Christ is the one that can still the storm for us. And yet sometimes, like Legion, we don't believe it. It's got to take something big for us to understand that he can actually do this. And it's incredible to think about. And so the Lord gets in the boat and... Oh, sorry, I should just mention this as well, that it's very interesting that madness is also a strong theme in these chapters. Madness, of all things. So that the Lord talks in parables about madness and so forth, but he's accused of being insane by his family. He's accused of being insane by the scribes and Pharisees, and even the disciples say, "Don't you even care for us?" I mean, what's the implication there? Don't you... Haven't I just showed you in everything I've ever done for you that I care, and now you're accusing me of not caring about you? Can you imagine that sort of thing? People saying, "Heal me, do this," pushing, shoving, accusing you, "Feed me, take me here, answer me this, what's the greatest commandment, what's that mean?" Honestly, does it make you feel like you could lose your sanity sometimes? Imagine how the Lord felt. Sometimes I think to myself that the healing of Legion is a little acknowledgement by his father, just to say, "Son, this is an insane person. This is what is out there amongst all those people that you're dealing with. You are the only one who is clear-headed. You're the only one that's sane. You're the only one that can still the storm. You are okay." It's an acknowledgement by God, at least on some level, to the Son, to see the dichotomy between what it is to serve God untouched by sin. Well, I shouldn't say untouched by personal sin, but he was affected by all of our sins. And so when he gets to Legion, he says, "What's your name?" He says, "We are many." Can you imagine the Lord thinking, "I know what you feel like after a day like that"? He took on him all of our infirmities. And that's what he was like. He knows what it's like to be pushed from pillar to post. And so where did he go? So he goes across the Sea of Galilee down to the area of Gadara down there, or Gergesea. It's in that area of Decapolis. And I remember going there, and you can go right to the spot where they say, "This is where the herd of swine came down." I don't know, there's plenty of steep places, but it's in that general vicinity, okay? And the storm that the Lord's gone through is now completely, instantaneously and miraculously stilled, because he's got up and said, peace be still. And he's come out of it, and we're going to land somewhere. Now, you're all the disciples in the boat. Just think about this, because there's 2 legions. It's double as bad as what it looks at first glance. Matthew says there's 2. Mark and Luke just focus in on 1. Perhaps the other's ungrateful and doesn't want to go with the Lord. Who knows? But when you think about where we're going to land, you're the disciples, and 2 naked guys come down to the beach, and they go, and they're swearing and probably fighting and cutting themselves and doing all sorts of crazy things. And I'm there going, don't land here, don't land here, don't land here, don't land here, don't land here. And the Lord says, let's disembark over here. Why does he do that every time? The Lord always does something just to put us off balance. And part of me says, well, he's in control. He knows what he's doing. And 3 parts say, but I could still die. Why are we going to land here on this spot? And he disembarks, and when Legion says to him, in Matthew chapter 12, 8, what have you to do with us, O Son of God? Because the Lord was in the process of trying to heal him. Either the Lord had got off and said, look, I'm going to heal you. Now start to come out of him, O demons, or however he did it. Legion had responded to that. He was scared. He was absolutely scared. I've got a question for you. How did Legion guess to call him the Son of God? Or in the other accounts, the Son of the Most High. How did Legion know about that? And while you're thinking about that too, just put that on the shelf there in your mind. Also, why did they come down to the beach? And I'll just talk in just singular. Why did Legion come down to the beach to meet this boat? All right, he saw that storm. And I don't know, I've not been that mad before, but maybe he was looking at the storm and thought, gee, I'd love to be out in that. Or maybe he looked at the storm and thought, I'm glad I'm not out in that. I don't know. But he looked at the storm and saw how incredibly crazy it was, and all of a sudden it just went, and there was an instant calm, and out came a boat. So it's obviously got his attention, because if that boat had anything to do with it, surely Legion, if he's lucid enough to say you're the Son of God, and for reasons which we'll just mention in a moment, surely Legion now is having indicated to him that this person, whoever's in that boat, could probably still his storm. We'll just have a look, if you wouldn't mind, please, in Matthew chapter 4, because this is not the first time Christ has been around in the area of Decapolis. I don't know if you knew this. In fact, I was only looking at this the other day and I thought, wow, you can read something over and over and over again and not see anything. I mean, males do it all the time, especially when I'm looking for the salt in the pantry there. So, in Matthew chapter 4 and verse 23, we read this. He went throughout all of Galilee, teaching in their synagogues and proclaiming the gospel of the kingdom and healing every disease and every affliction among the people. So his fame spread throughout all Syria, and they brought him all the sick, those afflicted with various diseases and pains, those oppressed by demons, epileptics and paralytics, and he healed them. And great crowds followed him from Galilee and from Decapolis, and from Jerusalem and Judea, and from beyond the Jordan. From Decapolis, that's where Legion was from. Now, is there any chance at all that Legion heard this? Is there any chance that last year Legion was okay and still with his family and friends? Is there any chance, verse 1 of chapter 5, that seeing the crowds and Legion maybe being with them, he went up on the mountain, and when he sat down, his disciples came to him and those others who maybe listened? Did Legion hear him utter the Beatitudes? Did Legion hear him say, you have heard that it hath been said, you shall not commit adultery? Did Legion hear that the Lord said, you have heard that it was said of them of old time, you shall not murder, and whoever murders shall be in danger of the judgment? Did Legion hear when he was talking about casting your pearls before swine. Do you think Legion heard any of those things? I'd like to think that he did. He must have heard something, because nobody in their right mind, now that sounds bad because now you say he wasn't in his right mind, nobody at all would ever suddenly think of, you're the Son of God. I think Legion could have been there. And it's just a suggestion. And it adds to the point, if he was, that when he gets healed, what position do we find Legion in when he gets healed? Remember how Legion is sitting with the Lord and conversing with him? It just reminds you of that scene when the Lord went up to the mountain and he sat down with his disciples, and now Legion wants to be part of that, something that he'd seen before. Maybe. I'm just putting it out there, but we know somewhere along the line, either second-hand or first-hand, Legion had heard that this fellow here, this preacher, is going about saying he's the Son of God. And he's got the power to do things. And something now has unhinged him. So, what's Legion's problem? Has anybody got any suggestions about what Legion's problem could be? Because I've got some pretty technical terms, and I'm only going to put them out as a suggestion anyhow. Yep. And caused by what, do you think? Pigs? Oh, no takers, right? No problem. Well, I'll give you some technical terms which hopefully just baffles you enough to say, oh, well, maybe it is. There's these two diseases which can be passed on by pigs called trichinella and cysticercosis. And what it is, I mean, it sounds disgusting, right? And there's probably good reason why pigs are unclean, but you'll never get me off bacon and eggs, I can tell you. There's this worm that lodges in pig's flesh, and if it's not cooked properly, it can be transferred to humans. And it goes into soft tissue. And one of the soft tissues which can lodge in is the brain. And it causes a lot of swelling and a lot of pain, and it can drive people insane. Now, I just read about it. Maybe that's what it is. Maybe that's a reason why Legion said, take it out to the swine. Maybe there was an acknowledgement there that there was some sort of connection between the way he was and with the swine itself. That's just a suggestion. Take it on board if you like, quickly dismiss it. It's up to you, but I'm just putting it out there anyway. So, what's going on? Well, look at this. He comes down there, and all the records say, at the time when he's about to heal him, now there was a herd of many pigs feeding in some distance. Now, why on earth tell us that there are pigs feeding? Who cares? Why not just say, there's a bunch of pigs over there? Why tell us that they're all feeding? Now, I'm going to put this up, and it may work. Let's see. Look at the dish they're eating out. That was the farmer laughing. Now, that's disgusting, isn't it? Imagine 2,000 of them making that squealing noise, gulping their food. Now, it's Leviticus chapter 20. Let's go and have a quick look. The unclean and the clean animals. What is going on with this? I got fascinated with this whole idea of unclean animals. I mean, do you know what the most disgusting animal is to Jewish cultural sensitivity? Have a guess. Of course, it's the pig. And you think, the poor pig, like, why? I mean, there's animals as disgusting as that, but you've got to admit, it's pretty down there on the level, isn't it? It's not very nice. So God tells us, I might ask, why did he separate animals into clean and unclean? And it seems so arbitrary.
For health reasons, things going off, going bad quickly, shellfish and so forth.
Yeah.
Getting cooked, getting sick from it.
Still, there were other shellfish and there were other things which weren't. Marine animals which still go off quickly. I mean, that's probably, you could have some reason there.
The scavengers. They're unclean scavengers.
And that could be legitimate too. But in the end, we have to say, we're really grasping at straws for these real reasons. God just said, this is it. I'm going to bring up the food in front of you, because every day when you go to eat something, which is a pretty normal thing for us to do as humans, every single day when you go to eat something, I want you to be reminded that I've separated humanity into two classes. It's clean and unclean. People that serve me and people that don't. This is what he says here. It's as simple as that. Verse 22 of Leviticus chapter 20. You shall therefore keep all my statutes. I want you to think about them, and all my rules, and do them. That in the land where I'm bringing you to live, that may not vomit you out. And you shall not walk in the customs of the nation that I'm driving out from before you, for they did all these things, therefore I detested them. But I have said to you, you shall inherit their land, and I will give it to you to possess, a land flowing with milk and honey. I am Yahweh your God, who has separated you from the peoples. You shall therefore separate the clean beast from the unclean bird from the clean, and so forth and so on. Now, when you go into it, what was the classification? Now, we all know this. Chewing the cud and the cloven hoof, yes. So, we won't go there, but in Leviticus 11 and Deuteronomy 14, parts the hoof and is cloven. What do you think it represents? That's what it represents. Something or someone who is actually sure-footed and stable in the way of God. That's able to negotiate the terrain between what's good and what's evil. That's what a cloven-footed animal represents. It's not because it has nothing to do with spirituality, but it's what God says it represents. Do you know where that's from? That's what the Jews say. They got it, because we say, this is something Christadelphians made up. There's no way the Jews they did get it. Pure and simple. That's what they understood. That's what they said. Somebody that walks in God's way. What about a person that chews the cud? What do you think that represents? A ruminant. What is a ruminant?
Meditation.
That's right. Yes, meditation. Someone that goes over and over and over God's word, who meditates on it, who thinks about it, and pun intended, keeps bringing it back up, right? Over and over again. Now you think, you can ruminate on many things, because, I've got someone I can ruminate on, and I think, I can't stand them, I hate what they said to me. I think, no, shouldn't bring that back up again, I've just got to let it go. I'm at the shop, I'm just about to pay for something, and they come back into my mind, I think, I hate them, and why do they... And it keeps coming up. And all of us are experts at doing that, aren't we? How do we become experts at bringing up the Word of God all the time and thinking about how we can put it into practice and speak nicer to one another and to be more patient and hospitable and caring and loving and do more for God and service to Him in the ecclesia? Wouldn't that be good if we could keep bringing that? But this is simply what these animals represent. It's as easy as that. And the Jewish nation understood that. They got it. Well, the poor pig is the worst of them all. So I'm a kid now, but before you even get on to the kid, I'm a kid, I'm a Jewish kid, and I say, look at some of those animals out there. And I go, Mum, horse, yum, horse burger for tea. And Mum says, well, hold on, let's look at the criteria, son. Does it chew the cud? And the little kid goes, no. Well, we can't eat it then. We'll just look at it. Does it have a cloven hoof? And the little kid looks down, really sad. No. And the kid looks around again. He's thinking, I'm really hungry. And he looks at those little mice things up there, and one of them happens to be a rock badger, whatever a rock badger is. And he says, Mum, what about a rock badger? A rock badger burger would be pretty good. I could have one of those. Yum. Mum says, well, let's have a look. Does it chew the cud? And the son looks at it and says, yep, it's chewing the cud. Well, one other classification it has to meet. Does it have a cloven foot? Oh, no. No rock badger burger. Can't have that. And so that's what it was like. Every time they ate, mum or dad would be able to say to the kids, this is because God wants us to think about his word, to meditate it and to walk in his ways. It's as simple as that. It's the same as the word faith. The word faith means to bear up in the arms. And every time you saw a kid get picked up, you'd say, oh, that's the faith I'm meant to have in God. He's picking me up. It was to be brought before the Hebrew mind every single day. And that's why he put it into the animals. But the poor pig, like when God says there are some animals that chew the cud but don't have cloven feet. But guess how many animals have cloven feet but don't chew the cud? There's only one, and it's the poor old pig. Why is that? Going off, not that one, going off this one here, he parts the hoof, but he doesn't chew the cud. You saw how they just fed, gulp, 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 and down their food, not even chewing. It's disgusting. The poor old pig, the Jews know, pretends to be kosher. The little kid goes, he's a cute little fella, Mum. Could I have him on a burger tonight? Look, he's sticking out his feet like this, and for all intents and purposes, looks clean because he's got his little cloven feet. But he hasn't got the stomach for it, has he? Inwardly, he's rotten. You know what the Jews called the pig? A walking privy, a walking toilet. And you saw what they were just eating. I mean, I agree. Why? So what does the pig represent? This word's come up quite a bit. It comes up in the Lord's ministry regularly because when he's dealing with people like me in his service, I always want to appear better than what I am. It's just human nature. And I'm a fool for doing it. But isn't that what the pig is? Of all things, here's Legion. If he had a disease that was anything related to the pigs, I can't even dream up that it wasn't. I believe it was, because Legion says, you've got to send them into the pigs. Isn't it amazing then that Legion, right in that instance, becomes a symbol of that hypocritical nation and all the death of the pigs as they go screaming down into the Sea of Galilee. Just have a look at Isaiah chapter 65 and think about this big day in the Lord's life. This day, which we've said before, it talks about that same day, parable after parable, the Lord extending himself to his people, trying to get them to see what it is that he's about. When we go to Isaiah 65, this is absolutely amazing that there's no doubt at all this is a reference to the time of Legion, or Legion actually refers back to this, whichever way you like to see it work in God's word. Verse 1 of Isaiah 65, I was ready, God says, I was ready to be sought by those who did not ask for me. I was ready to be found by those who did not seek me. I said, here am I, to a nation that was not called by my name. Now who's that? Who's the nation not called by his name? Who's the ones that didn't seek him? It's the Gentiles. It's the Gentiles. God said, I'm ready. And that's what Christ did. Christ said, all right, let's get in the boat. He saw the crowds coming. He was sick of it. Let's go. And he goes across to the Gentiles. He's ready now to go preaching. I spread out my hands all the day. And I wonder if this one day in the Lord's life, a representative day of everything he's trying to do, spread out his hands and show Israel what he's about, he says, all right, they don't want to hear. I'm ready to be sought of someone else. Because they're a rebellious people who walk in a way that is not good. Following their own devices. People who provoke me to my face continually, sacrificing in gardens and making offerings on bricks, who sit in tombs. Where did Legion live? I mean, what do we know about Legion? He had no clothes on. He couldn't be tamed. He used to attack people, cut himself, fight, hurt himself. He lived amongst the cemeteries. He was absolutely insane. And spend the night in secret places who eat pig's flesh. and broth of tainted meat is in their vessels, who say, keep to yourself, do not come near me, for I am too holy for you. That is a wonderful picture of Israel, isn't it? Right there. Legion must be representative of them, that hypocritical nation that says, God, we're too holy for you. We don't need you anyway. Look, watch, we'll do it ourselves. And Christ goes to heal this man. There are other references in Isaiah to pigs if you wanted to note them. Isaiah 66 and verse 3, and in Isaiah 66 and verse 17. And probably have reference back to Legion as well. And so you think about Peter in terms of pigs, and they return. Although they seem like they got cloven feet and they walk the right way, go and wash one, see how disgusting they are, straight back into the muck and the filth. Instantly. That's what they're like. They don't maintain a negotiated path on a way of righteousness. And it's absolutely clear. And so when you think about the Lord when he said in Matthew 7 verse 6, don't cast your pearls before swine. What do we normally say that means? Some people bring it up in terms of preaching. We say, oh no, don't talk to them about the truth because they wouldn't listen. I would suggest, brothers and sisters, that verse has nothing to do with it. If the pearl is something of great value that God's given us, maybe, if I could read this to you, this is somebody that casted his pearls before swine. Not many days later, the younger son gathered all that he had, and he took a journey into a far country where he squandered his property in reckless living. That's casting your pearls before swine, isn't it? Where did he end up, that prodigal son? But feeding the pigs. In case we miss the point, that's what it is. We take the pearl of great price and we spend all that we have on sin and reckless living in a way of life that's not in common with Christ. That's what it means. And there's the pigs. That snarling, squealing, gulping, horrible, disgusting mess. And there it goes. And Legion sees it. Christ says, off into the pigs then. And down, screaming into the Sea of Galilee. And can you see the little storm there? And by the way, just like that there, you go to YouTube, pigs feeding. Yep. There's a site that's got pigs feeding. So I put in pigs swimming. And guess what? Do you reckon pigs can swim or not? Absolutely yes. They're great at swimming. I mean, they're that round. They don't even have to do anything. They just float there. And the little trollers going, yeah, and yes, it's on YouTube. You can go and see it. So when they all drowned, brothers and sisters, it was miraculous. God did it. And God did it not because, oh, they're drowned now, wow. Legion saw something miraculous happen. He knew that this man had power to calm and still his storm. It would have been a miracle if none of those pigs had survived. And they didn't, because God drowned them. And that huge storm, that tumultuous storm that frothed up the Sea of Galilee once more and became completely calm. And so we have Legion finally sitting clothed and in his right mind. I mean, in one level you can at least say, well, there we are, there's a baptism for you. The old man goes into the water and afterwards we're out and we're clothed. Everyone can see that type. Everyone can see that if you spend time with Christ, in the end it will still your storm. The storms in your life that you have. I have to suggest it because it's just like, what do you think where it says about 2,000 pigs? And by the way, I say this with tongue-in-cheek because I'm not big on Bible numerology except when it's clear, like, for example, the 1,260 days. There's something there. So what do you think where it says there was about 2,000 cubits between the ark going into the land and the rest of the people when they crossed the River Jordan? Do you think there could be a link? I mean, everyone's so stony, they don't want to say it, but maybe, tongue-in-cheek, maybe there's a clear principle with a pig for a year principle here. I'm just... So that if a pig represents 1 year and we had 2,000 pigs, I don't know. Is it too obvious that we go, is it so obvious we go, as if that's right? Why even bother say there was 2,000? The kids at school said, well, because it's about 2,000, sir, that's why it says it's 2,000, because it doesn't matter. I said, well, it doesn't even have to put a number on it then. Just say there's a bunch of pigs. There's a whole herd of them over there. Don't say about 2,000. That does my head in. So it's just a suggestion, maybe. I don't know. And not the pig for a year principle. Don't quote me on that one, please. Someone's probably done it before, seriously, and I'm not. So there was a huge commotion. This healing of Legion, I think, it's probably one of his most dramatic healings. You have to, wow. And dangerous too. And so instantaneous and massive. And we go, the poor pigs. But if they were the cause of all the disease, they should have been quarantined and put down yonks ago. So don't worry about that. And the herdsmen, well, it's like, when you get bird flu and they come to those farms, they put down every single bird. That's just the way it works. So maybe there was some justification for it, and at least if it was the origination of the disease, it definitely stopped the disease. Not that it mattered, it went into the water source, into the pristine Galilee. I don't have the answers for everything. I just think they're there to be thought about, but Legion is massive, and he's begging. He wants to go with the Lord, doesn't he? He says, please let me come with you. And the Lord stops him because he's got that spirit in him. And he knows he'll be of value back here in Decapolis because, later, it's in, where is it? I just want to give you this quote. We don't go there. It's in Mark chapter 7 and verse 31. Later, the Lord goes back to Decapolis. Does anybody know what happens there then? It's just so amazing. Guess how many people come out to him? 4. It's the feeding of the 4,000 in that area. And you must think, surely Legion has been the major contributor to that. Surely he has. Sitting there clothed and in his right mind. And I think about Legion too. You imagine if you're one of his friends too, and he starts to come back in, and he waves to you and says, "Hi, how you going?" And you think, he's going to bite my other ear off now. It would be like Josh said before, it'd be like Saul of Tarsus being converted in the new ecclesia. People would be scared at first. But then he'd have the story to tell about the gospel, the Son of God, the Most High. And maybe he heard him before that. And he went mad, but he made him sane again. And people said, it's like Nebuchadnezzar. And they saw some links and they saw the power of Christ. Now, brothers and sisters, it's so obvious, isn't it? If we need a new attitude and we need our storms in our life stilled, we have to spend time with Christ.
BibleTruthAndProphecy.com is a worldwide collaboration by Christadelphians to help promote the understanding of God's Word to those who are seeking the truth about the human condition and God's plan and purpose with this earth and with mankind upon it. Bible Truth and Prophecy is part of a wider set of online resources provided by Christadelphianvideo.org for establishing just how far removed the true Christian teaching of the first century apostles is from that taught by mainstream Christendom today. BibleTruthAndProphecy.com is very much a standalone website, but benefits from our vast network of sites and resources and social media. Here are just a few of the things that BibleTruthAndProphecy.com offers. We have a good number of written articles supplied to us from brothers from all over the globe. These deal with first principle issues, creation versus evolution, the inspiration of the Bible, and so much more. We have a whole section of video study series. These are studies that have been posted onto our YouTube channel, but because of the difficulty of the search feature within YouTube, we have chosen to host on Bible Truth and Prophecy. So now every video you search for within the site, you can be guaranteed that it will be of a Christadelphian nature. We also have a preaching video section where any ecclesia is invited to download and use or embed these videos within their own ecclesial websites. We also have an exhortation service, where we produce 2 or 3 exhortations per week, which we then circulate to brethren and sisters in isolation. We also have an ever-growing list of approved Christadelphian sites. We also have a page of live news feeds, so you can keep up to date with all the breaking news as it happens. We also have a section for the daily readings. Each day at around midnight we publish all 3 of the daily readings, and then later on in the day we publish thought for the days, often based on all 3 portions of the daily readings. Within each daily reading post there is also a link to enable you to have the Bible chapter read to you directly. We also feature Bible in the News videos which we have produced from the Bible in the News website. We also feature Brother Don Pierce's milestone snippets, which come out approximately 3 times a week. We also feature Andy Walton's weekly World Watch, and other commentaries and analysis from other brethren on world news events. You can also subscribe to the blog and be notified of posts as they happen in real time, and also subscribe to the weekly newsletter, which is provided by christadelphianvideo.org. Every page and post on the site has the facility to be able to leave a comment or make an observation, so please take advantage of this and let us know what you think of the site.